Hey everyone, this is Thomas from Springfield Daily. We are in the studio at the Innovate Springfield Incubator in downtown Springfield. My guest today is Brian Deters, one of the Democratic candidates in the nearby 18th Congressional District. Thank you so much for being here. So please tell me a little bit about yourself and why are you running for Congress?
Great, yeah, sure. Thanks for having me here, Thomas. Appreciate the opportunity. As you said, my name is Brian Deters. I am running as a Democrat in the 18th District primary, and the reason I'm here is, like a lot of people, I'm concerned. I'm concerned about where we are at right now. My involvement, my decision to get into the race is above politics, truly and genuinely. I've had a unique experience. I have a different lens, and I'd like to share with you what that lens is about here, of course, this afternoon, in that I'm a teacher, specifically a social studies teacher, teacher of history and sociology. So I think like a lot of educators, and if you've noticed around the country, there are a lot of teachers that are pursuing this. We see kind of the red light beeping at us that we are at a critical state. And we are at a critical state with the cultural divide. What is connected to that is this broken system, this political broken system. So kind of one thing led to another, but I hear him today here talking about, with that in mind, my concern. And that concern stems from me being a father. So I'm a family guy. I have twin daughters that are 12. They're my driving force, but also other people's kids. So as a teacher, that's my lens. I'm concerned about the future. And so I have a lot of ideas on what we need to do, what we need to expose, and how we can work to move forward in what has become absolutely a society full of absolutism. I think if you talk with anybody, they know that things are not right with us. And so I'd like to have that conversation.
All right, yeah, and I guess I want to open up the floor to you and just say, what's your number one issue? Is it a policy thing or is it more a cultural thing?
Yeah, so really the latter. Really it's more of the fact that I am in tune to where we are at in our culture. Obviously, policy is a very important part of somebody that's running for a legislative position, and I have a lot of ideas in that regard. But I think right now we are at a state where we need people to step up, regular people. I see myself certainly as a teacher, not as a politician, that are ready to have the important, needed conversation. And so, as I said, for me, it is about that cultural dynamic. And what's happening here in our society, in the 18th District, in the state, in the country, in the world, and I've got a unique experience to speak about with that in a moment, is we are, as I mentioned, in this state of absolute. Why is that? There's a reason for the division, and there are institutions that are profiting off of what is dividing us. One thing I know for certain, living here in the district and living out of the district, we have way more in common. Most people have way more in common. We need to focus on those commonalities, and I'm here to have that conversation. So our motto, our campaign motto, is really more than that. It's something I firmly believe in, and that is it's time to heal. And I think it's resonated with a lot of people on both sides of the political spectrum, because I do think this is above politics, and that's why I'm here.
All right, so when you say it's time to heal, heal what and heal how? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question, one that I've had a lot of. And a lot of people, particularly really angry, rightfully so, progressive types, have said to me, I'm not ready to heal. I'm not ready to come together. And I understand where they're coming from, but my angle of it is we have to. We're at a tipping point. We have to understand that we have to come together as a people. Our democracy is at stake. Now that's a bold statement, but we live in this different age. I've been in tune to that. I teach sociology. I teach a unit on media. Here we are, doing this radio show in a very kind of new age way, right? I mean, it's all online. We're on Facebook. That just speaks to one example of where we are at culturally, politically, economically. New media is in its infancy state, and it's kind of uncharted waters. We've been attacked. It's clear, it's obvious. We are being attacked by foreign entities, clearly the Russians in a particular case. That came to be with the 2016 election. But what it has done is it has divided us. And so I just want to have that conversation. We have to heal. What it is that we have to heal is our culture, how we view people. We have to remove ourselves from our ideological state of being locked in on one side or the other, and we need to start listening to each other. So that's really what this is about.
All right. So you as a legislature, what does how do you lead that? How do you lead that healing as an elected representative?
Yeah. Well, if I'm fortunate enough to win here in a couple weeks and move on and shock the world in November, because a Democrat has not won the 18th district since the New Deal, so we're pushing on 100 years. Extraordinary political times then. I think maybe I would argue as a history teacher, even more.
Donald Trump is the president.
Well, even more extraordinary times that we're living in right now. You said it. But as a legislator, I think, look, when we think of the legislators that we know, they're active. Yes, of course, it's important as a legislator to present policy, to present bill opportunities that are relevant to this district, and I intend to do that. But in this state and age, what we are looking for is somebody that can be vocal, that's somebody that can be active, that's somebody that can be an advocate, and I intend to do that, particularly with the issue of education. Education, we know the public model is designed to be a state, controlled by and large institution with local assistance. But the federal government does play a role and has since Lincoln, since the Morrill Act in 1862. And that needs to continue. What I would like to do is to come in and say, I am a teacher. I'm a teacher of high school kids. I'm a teacher that taught in the public sphere for almost 2 decades. And we are in a critical state with our education, particularly our public model. We have to change that. Where does it start? It starts with us changing how we view education, but more to the point, how we view teachers and how we view the profession of teaching.
All right, well, let's jump into that. On your website, I'm trying to find the exact quote. You talk about bringing us into the technological age instead of out of the industrial model. What does that mean? And
well, when we think of our schools, what do we think of? We think of 8 a.m., there's the bell. We go into a room, the rows are nice and neat. We sit there, we've got 45 minutes, 50 minutes, and we get a lesson. And typically, traditionally, we had a teacher up at the front, and the teacher was presenting this information, and we were being good little monkeys, is like I like to say to my students, you're being a good little monkey, writing down what we're supposed to, regurgitating the information. And sometimes that worked really well. A lot of it completely, of course, depended on the teacher, their knowledge, their care factor, their motivation, their influence. But that's the industrial model, isn't it? That was set years ago to create this atmosphere for the industrial age. And we're moving away from the industrial age. We are out of the industrial age. So we need to learn from that. And I've been on the front edge of that in the sense that I've been in the classroom. I've had the experience of teaching in the district and out of the district, really out of the district in an international setting. And I'm proud of that. And it's something that I bring to the table that other candidates can't. And it's a huge positive thing that I can bring back to the 18th, particularly specifically with regards to the issue of education. So we have to obviously have this implementation of technology, but we have to have this advocacy of critical thinking. That's huge. I was watching something that was out there recently with a gentleman that was speaking on this issue. And, we live in the Google age. I say it now as a teacher all the time. From the time I started teaching in 1995 till right now, you can imagine how you teach history, how you teach sociology has changed drastically. The information is there for the kids. What we have to do is get them to think about, what does the information mean? We have to get them to understand how to decipher between what is correct, what is factual, and what isn't. And let's face it, that's part of this big problem that we're experiencing too. If you have a chance, go to my website. I don't know if you've had that chance, but I've put together a video series. Time to Heal video series.
I'm familiar, but we'll definitely drop that link in the video.
Please do. And on that series, I talk about what it is that's dividing us. And it starts with elitism. And within elitism, you see absolutism, sensationalism, and anti-intellectualism all plaguing our society. And it's impacting us politically, it's impacting us economically, and it's certainly impacting us as where we stand in the world. So these are things that we have to teach our kids. Going back to the response. We have to have atmospheres in classrooms that lend themselves to that thought process and forward thinking.
All right, and you mentioned that teacher quality is super important, and one of the critical issues in Central Illinois is our public schools are having a really difficult time attracting teachers. And I guess, sort of, what do you think is driving that in part, and then how does the federal government help Central Illinois get educators in the classroom?
Yeah. Okay. Let's start with the first one. You're right. Clearly, the numbers don't lie. This is huge. This needs to be something. As I've traveled the district, I'm a bit concerned because this isn't necessarily on a lot of people's radar screens. People are leaving the profession. Good people are leaving the profession. As you know, I've been in the trenches, so I understand the frustrations, the bureaucratic, what's the word?
Infrastructure.
Exactly, that is forced upon us as educators. That's cumbersome, that gets people fatigued, that gets people, let's use the word, burnt out. You see it a lot. So you tie that in with this kind of demonizing of the public model that is in play. The current administration with Secretary DeVos is without question demonizing the public model. Now, this advocacy of privatization, of vouchers, of all these different things, it appeals to a lot of parents. I'm a parent. I get it. What do we want? We want the best for our kids. But this ultimately is not what's best for our kids because it's not what's best for our society. It's not what's best for our district. So one of the things that we need to make sure we understand is we've got to pay attention to other people's kids as well. And you see, unfortunately, public schools lacking the necessary funding and more significantly, lacking that quality teachers that are going into the profession or that stay in the profession. So that takes me to what we can do about it. I've suggested that we could even use federal money in a federal kind of grant incentive program. We have to get people first to understand that we have a teacher crisis going on and that we need to change the way people think about the profession. So I've taught in Morton. It's a phenomenal school district. It's the creme de la creme. It's one of the best in the state, the country, and certainly in the 18th district. And I'm very happy for my experience. I have wonderful people there, and there's so much support. It is what a public school district should look like in a lot of ways. A lot of parental involvement, funding that's there. But you go a couple districts away, and that's not there. So I've also had the experience of teaching internationally. And in both cases, the one thing that I've gotten out of teaching in Geneva, and I can't explain this to you other than to just really say it, is just a different vibe about what it means to be this type of professional, to be a teacher. On more than one occasion, I've had people kind of trying to compliment me, say, Brian, you seem like you're a pretty smart guy. Why are you a teacher? Now, let's just think about that question. I've mentioned this to a few people, in the course of the campaign. But that speaks volumes, doesn't it, about where we are at in this state. Oh, so people that are, intelligent or capable or whatever you want to say aren't supposed to go into teaching. They're supposed to go into something else. That's not the way it is in other places of the world. I've experienced that firsthand. That has to change here. And if we don't change that, we're just going to keep going down this road.
And so, obviously that's a whole conversation in its own right. But sort of,
yeah.
if you have a proposal for how do we change that culture? That not even do we change the profession, do we change the perception of the profession?
It takes time. It's like anything. It's socialization, isn't it? It's like how we learn to do anything that we do. It has to happen, and it's not going to happen overnight. I think it starts with our media. It starts with conversations we have at the dinner table. It starts with conversations we have when we're at the coffee shops. There has to be this awareness. And that's something that a statesman can provide. Let's look, for example, at Senator Sanders. He is now, of course, connected with democratic socialism, movement in the United States. He's one vote in the Senate, but he's so much bigger than that in that he is this voice. I feel like I can become a legislator with a voice to talk about the future of our education. That's probably the biggest thing I can bring to the federal level. I also think, as I was getting at, we kind of shifted gears a little bit, we can even be as bold as to create incentive financial funding for the best and the brightest to be incentivized to go into teaching. Money talk. Money is obviously a thing that we have to address here as well.
No, that's, nobody wants to say that, but that's
yeah.
one of the things under there. I don't want to transition away from education because obviously that is one of the key issues, but I do have some other policy questions I wanted to ask you about.
Sure.
one of the key ones, especially for us at Springfield Daily, is that back in December, the FCC voted to repeal the net neutrality regulations, and those that has actually sort of formalized in the last couple of weeks. What's your take on that move? Was it the right move, or?
I'm very concerned about the direction that we're heading with that, because it speaks to, again, this kind of overly corporative approach to things. And the bigger picture is that it goes back to this elitist model. The top 1%, some of them connected to these big companies that are definitely pushing the envelope to make this happen, are benefiting at a much greater rate than Tom, Dick, and Harry, the working and middle class guy. So I'm very much concerned about it, and spoke out against it quite a bit when it was in November, I think, was when we first started seeing this kind of happening, and you kind of just knew, based on the way this administration is heading, that we were going to deal with where we're at now with this. So.
Right. But thinking of obviously net neutrality was actually codified during the Obama administration, but also during the Obama administration, the United States really gave up a lot of its control over the ICANN domain registry system to a nonprofit, which was overseen by a more global body rather than just the Commerce Department. Was that the right move?
Well, that's hard to say, and I don't know a lot of the necessary specifics about that particular side of it, but I do think that we always have to be continuing to mesh when is there too much government overstep and when is there not, whether it's regards to this issue or anything, agricultural speaking in the district. There's topics that fit with that. Look, I think at the end of the day, what we need to do is we need to understand what are the different areas. To me, internet is infrastructure, okay? It's vitally important for the 21st century. Like roads, like rail, like waterways, like air travel. And I've always taken this approach, philosophy. Again, I'm not a politician, so this is my philosophy as an educator, as a social studies teacher, and as a citizen, that we always need to be thinking about making sure that the government is involved with those things that have to be in place for all of our citizens to be able to have that opportunity to succeed in America. And if people don't have the same exposure to the internet in this day and age, it's so much of a hindrance for their opportunities. And so I think that the right move is to take more of the broader approach like the Obama administration, to make certain that we have regulations in place that don't allow for companies to potentially be manipulative of citizens that can't afford certain things or can't get certain coverage. I just think it's the wrong direction to take.
All right, and thinking of infrastructure, you mentioned on your website, everyone obviously loves roads and bridges, but you mentioned the waterways, specifically the locks and the dams on the Mississippi. Can you explain that for people who maybe don't interact with those on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I grew up in Quincy, which is a whole other thing that's kind of brought me to this moment, because the gerrymandering of 2011 put my hometown of Quincy in the district with where my home is in Morton. But that's another topic. So Quincy's on the Mississippi, and there's a lot of this understanding. We have crumbling infrastructure on the waterways. We have dams, locks and dams that haven't been touched, from what I've read, from whom I've talked to, since the New Deal, right around the same time that a Democrat was the legislator of the 18th district. So there's a major need for development. Obviously, it's job opportunities for us in the 18th district, but it's also vitally important for movement of grain, for movement of agribusiness through these waterways. So it's a win-win for agriculture. It's a win-win for infrastructure in this district.
Yeah, and so that's just one of those things that we need to be paying attention to, in addition to all the other things.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we're kind of bouncing around, but with regards to infrastructure, in regards to internet, I was having a great conversation a couple nights ago in Hancock County, in Carthage, and a gentleman spoke up, and he talked about the need for broadband, and it's so true. And you think about the smaller communities in the 18th district. I've been driving all over the place, and I've been driving through these small towns. A lot of the towns that I drive through when I was growing up as a kid, going to soccer games here in Springfield, actually from Quincy, and they're repressed, and they're in a rough state. It's eye-opening. Some of the signs of poverty that you see in our rural communities are comparable to things that I've witnessed with my own eyes in Bangkok, in South Africa, and that should make people have pause. I was thinking that just yesterday when I was driving. What we can do to really help these communities is get them connected to the world that we all live in, remove them from this digital divide that this is all fitting into what we're talking about.
No, for sure.
And think about this. This goes back to what the guy was saying. He's like, we have people that want to come back to our communities, that go off to college, that find jobs. And they actually want to come back. They want to raise their families. They want to be contributors to the local economy. But that option's not there. If we were to get broadband accessibility, if we were able to get the ability for them, we know how it works. You can work from anywhere. You get these people working from, we don't have as many brick and mortar buildings or whatever, or somebody can go to a meeting once a week, wherever it is in the Chicago suburbs, and still have their home in this place, a home that they can build up their neighborhoods, they can contribute to the local schools. This is vision. This is how we need to pursue things going forward. That's infrastructure.
I mean, you've mentioned the New Deal. I mean, rural electrification, where the federal government just did it.
Yeah.
I mean, is that almost what you're calling for with broadband?
In essence, similar, yeah. I mean, I think it would be kind of comparable. It's a good connection to a lot of the kind of alphabet soup efforts of the 30s. And I think it's important that the federal government steps in. I mean, the Trump's plan is all about privatization. I think $200 billion is what has been offered for infrastructure, which is just not going to get the job done. Money doesn't grow on trees. I get that. Everybody from this district, from this area, by nature, by our upbringing, we're conservative economically speaking, and I'm one of them too. I mean, we can't just spend. What we need to do is we need to prioritize.
All right, and again, just sort of maybe just opening this up more. What can the government do to help stimulate new businesses in this area? I mean, beyond the broadband, beyond sort of the shovel-ready jobs. I mean, is there a sort of again changing the culture?
Yeah.
How do we change the business climate?
Well, I think that's a tough. I mean, if somebody had that answer, they'd be
doing it.
They'd be doing it. That's a difficult question to answer. I think the answer I just gave you is a perfect example of the efforts to move forward in that regard, to kind of meshing in infrastructure, meshing in technology, the idea that people want to come back and change the culture in that regard. So I think that's part of it. Another thing, though, too, is this area is really big on transport. It's really big on, we're right in the middle of the country, obviously. And so I know around here, for instance, the high-speed rail is something that's being really pushed. That can happen throughout the district, and I think that can be beneficial. And we can have link-ups from Chicago through Macomb, through Quincy to Kansas City, and some of these towns, along the way could benefit from that.
And again, something I saw on your website, you talk about the need for agriculture and in that area, but you talk about crop insurance reform, and sort of that's from just when I saw that, I go, that's a bold stance. I want to let you sort of flesh that out. Say.
Well, I think it speaks to the fact, what it speaks to is this overall concept that's my driving force from why I'm here, and that is that there are certain things that are profiting off of us as Americans, and it goes back to the elitist model. I'm all for privatization, and I'm all for corporations. I'm all for businesses succeeding, so I don't want people to think otherwise. But kind of in the mold of Teddy Roosevelt 100 plus years ago, I'm concerned about manipulative business practices, and that happens in farm too. So you have big farm, and big farm is taking advantage of the opportunities that the federal government provides for farmers. So, you've got small farms that are trying to compete. So what I was suggesting was just basically putting a cap on premiums, and it would really only truly impact these bigger farms that really don't need that assistance, like the smaller farms. And at the same time, it can be a cost-effective way to save some money that can be prioritized for other things, like we were talking about the infrastructure, for example.
Yeah, and so this would be more, it's not eliminating the safety net, it's getting rid of the corporate welfare. It's sort of that gray area, but a real area for you.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think it's the idea, of course we need that safety net. That's critical. But it needs to be a safety net that's there for people that need it.
No, absolutely. I want to squeeze in a three-parter about climate change.
Three-parter, okay.
All right.
I gotta keep going here.
Is climate change real? If climate change is real, what threat does it pose? And then what, depending on your answers to the first two, what should the federal government be doing about it?
Very real, very concerning. The federal government should be doing everything that it possibly can, and that's exactly the opposite of what is happening in the Trump administration. And as somebody that is in tune to this, I'm, as a father and thinking of the future of my children, I'm concerned. We should be concerned. Look, what is happening here is a campaign. I talk about this in my anti-intellectualism video on my Time to Heal video series, so please check it out, please. And this is touchy because this gets into people's belief system. 97%, I don't have the notes in front of me and we're talking fast, but I'm pretty sure it's 97%. Maybe you can help me with that.
I'm familiar with the statistic,
of climatologists. So these are scientists who study climate. This is what they do. Have obviously said that, yes, man is contributing to the warmth of the planet. The climate is changing. We have to recognize that. The Arctics are speaking to us. These gigantic storms that we all experience, whether that is through the massive tornadoes that come through this region, whether it's through the horrific hurricanes, whether it's through the wildfires, whether it's through the drought. Obviously, Mother Nature is talking to us. I mean, if people want to deny that, they can, but they're wrong. And that's just the way it is. So yes, it's real. Of course it's real. The federal government needs to have this as one of the top priorities along with education. Now, why do some people have a holdup for this? It goes back to what I was saying, because media is influencing them to think differently. Media is making them question that, oh, that's not true. This is supposed to, this is just an agenda that's being set. But think about that. I mean, I don't think these climatologists are the ones that are looking to have big oil. What's going to happen if things start to happen? This is big oil influence. This is special interests. It just is. And it's being portrayed largely through conservative media to have people question it. And I've had that conversation with people, and there are a lot of people here that, for whatever reason, don't want to address it as science and factual. And it's frustrating.
All right, and thinking of obviously the green energy is one of the sort of portfolio of technologies to deal with climate change, to reduce the carbon footprint. And nuclear power is sometimes considered part of the green energy portfolio, sometimes not. Are you a supporter of nuclear power?
By and large, I think that it can really be a productive way for us to get efficient, clean energy. Look, I mean, it's obviously, we know that the downside of that is the danger of what that can present. And we have numerous examples through history where that's happened. I definitely am somebody that is in favor of continuing the exploration. It needs to be safe, unquestionably, and that's really the deciding factor. If we can create things that have more of an assurance of safety, and by and large they are very safe, but in the United States, 3 mile, you go back to 79, the 3 Mile Scare, and that kind of, since then we've kind of shaken. Then Chernobyl was a couple of years after that, and in the Ukraine, and obviously in Japan most recently. So these things happen, and it's concerning, but it is also an opportunity for us to find clean energy options, as you were saying. So,
yeah, all right, and
should be on the table.
All right, should be at least on the table.
Absolutely.
All right, and we're running a little low on time.
Okay.
So I want to transfer over to the race itself. You're in the Democratic primary in the 18th, and you're in a fairly crowded primary for a district not known for having lots of Democratic candidates. Why are you the standout candidate?
Yeah. First of all, to answer the question, I know we're running out of time here a little bit. I think that speaks volumes that there's 3 of us in the primary. There wasn't a primary in 2016. Professor Rodriguez came in after the fact and ran against Congressman Hood in the general. I think I separate myself from those 2 very distinguished gentlemen. I just was with Mr. Miller in Washington. In Jacksonville a few minutes ago. Those guys are brilliant. They're very policy-driven guys, meticulous policy guys, and you can go to their websites and see that. And although I feel like I'm versed in policy, I think I go beyond them in that there are three areas that I think I separate myself. And those three areas are, I think I'm a visionary, I'm a leader, and I'm a uniter. And those things are critical right now for our society. Again, it goes back to what's brought me here. It is our cultural divide that's brought me here. The vision is a lot of the stuff we've talked about. How can we move forward using the 21st century tools that we have, understanding what we need to understand as factual to move forward for things like in the environment. And so that's the vision part. The leader part is just within who I am. I've been a coach for over 20 years. And with that comes the skills necessary to get people to be inspired, to motivate people, to push them towards common goals, to keep them in the right frame of mind. And that's just something that I have within me. The uniter part is connected to that too. I'm an eternal optimist. People that know me would agree with my statement, I think, on that. We have to keep moving forward. And one thing I know, this district, the 18th district, conservative, absolutely. There has not been a Democrat that has won the 18th district since the New Deal, but also independent-minded, without a doubt, kind-hearted. I am the 18th district. I grew up in Quincy. Our home is in Morton. I've lived in a lot of places throughout, so I know the people here. And I know they're tired of the divide too. So I want to have that conversation. I want to bring what I know, my experiences of living in and out of the district, onto the table, and I'm excited. It's been a great couple of weeks. People are energized when we meet, and we've got a couple of days left on the campaign trail. We're running a 19 counties in 19 days thing right now, and it's been fun.
All right, and with that primary coming up on the 20th, primaries frequently have very low turnout, even by American election standards.
Even by American ones.
And obviously there's this reputation that, the 18th is just the Republican district. That's just what it is. Why should moderates and independents come out and pull a Democratic ballot?
I hope for the reasons that I just addressed in the last 30 minutes. We're living in extraordinary political times. I think people have to ask themselves, particularly with where we are seeing things now, what does it mean to be a Republican? What does it mean to be a Democrat? Where are we at now with regards to our ideologies being pushed so far one way or the other that we've stopped listening to each other? I'm here to raise my voice and say, let's come together. Let's figure out how we can move forward. So much of this district can benefit from more progressive-minded policies, as some of the stuff that we've talked about. Congressman LaHood seems like a very, very nice man. Yet to meet him. Seems like a family guy, but he's in line with the Trump administration. He's well into the over 90% range of voting along with Trump, and that doesn't always at all resonate to what is beneficial for the 18th district. So people have to make the decision. I think that we are in a once-in-a-century situation here. That's why I'm here. I believe in what our campaign is about. I believe I can be that voice. In October, I was on the couch reading Facebook posts from a colleague of mine in Morton. Cynical, a bit jaded. We've seen a lot of that. It's kind of part of that environment. People are tuning away from it. It's easy to do that. And the man said, smart guy, with in this feed, well, there's nothing we can do about it anyway. And I can't. This is just the truth. I got up off the couch and I went to my wife and I said, what do you think about me running for Congress in the 18th district? And she looked at me with this look of assurance. That's really all I needed ever since. So here I am running around like crazy. We've had a lot of support. There's a compelled feeling. I don't mean this to sound boastful, but it's just almost like I feel like I've been drawn to this moment and we're running with it.
No, that's great. And this has been Brian Deters. He's running for Congress in the 18th district, which is just a little bit west of here. And that primary date again is?
March 20th.
All right.
Get out and vote.
All right. Again, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
this has been Thomas Clatterbuck for Springfield Daily Radio.